Hey guys, this is gonna be a guide when it comes to how to play Windsong with her newly established Euphoria in the Atomic Heart collaboration. A little disclaimer, Windsong unfortunately doesn't have an archetype, she doesn't have a team, and therefore you would need to rip other very strong teams apart in order for Windsong to get the best possible teammates for Windsong together. You would never want to do that. Windsong is completely unplayable. But if you want to have some funsies, if you want to screw around a little bit with garbage, then this is going to be your guide. The characters that we're going to play together with her are, in very particular fashion, is Six. Six is going to be the partner in crime for Windsong, and he is a must play together with Windsong. Without him, Windsong becomes much worse than she already is. Look, Windsong is already complete garbage, but without Six, she becomes even more garbage, you know, she like kinda starts to stink. I'm sorry for my wording, but it is unfortunately true. That is because Windsong wants to stack something we call measure. Those measure stacks can be stacked up to 55 times, and you will never accomplish that in a timely manner unless you play her with Six, because Six, with his newly established Euphoria back, a couple of versions ago, he has a buff incantation that gives more measure stacks to Windsong than any other thing in the game would. That's why Six is a must play together with Windsong. And now comes the part where you have to rip your teams apart. The best thing to play, in addition to Six with Windsong, is gonna be Chen Higuang. You can also play Windsong instead of Chen Higuang. Chen Higuang is a tiny little bit better for the reason that whenever he uses his ultimate, which he will use his ultimate on the very first turn if you have him P2. If you watch my channel and if you listen to me, which you definitely should by the way, then you have Chen Higuang at P2. Therefore he's a little bit better than Flutterpage because his ultimate removes his own incantations from your hand, and he has at least a chance to replace his own incantations with either the buff from Six or with the very needed incantations for Windsong. That's why he is gonna be the best in slot there. If you don't have Chen Higuang at P2 though, then opt into Flutterpage. It doesn't make that much of a difference, but you know, you want to have the best in slots, and that is going to be Chen Higuang P2. Now for our sustain, we of course just gonna use the currently best sustain in the game. Fatutu is kinda dethroned. She's now only the second best sustain in the game. Enigma unfortunately takes a little bit of the cake because he is just an overall crazy powerhouse. He's one of the best characters in the game, and therefore we're gonna use him and destroy our Dynamo lineup. That is what we're gonna have to do if we wanna screw around with Windsong. Now before we hop into battle, I will already talk about the Psychube, the Resonance and the Portrays. So here we go. The best in slot Psychube for Windsong right now is actually the signature Psychube from Marcus called Another Story. It does everything that you possibly could ask for better than any other Psychube in the game. It gives you flat ultimate might. It makes it so that after the carrier, after you cast a rank 3 or 2 incantation, which you will always do, especially when you use your ultimate, because the rehabilitation incantations will always be rank 2 or 3 because you combine them, you know what I mean? And then you gain damage dealt plus a certain percent that stacks. You stack that up like a true champion. And when the carrier consumes 2 or more Eureka within a round, which you will also always do every single turn, you will use the Practicability incantation, and that makes you consume 2 Eureka, and therefore you gain incantation might plus a certain percentage. So this is by far the best in slot Psychube for Windsong. It's the signature Psychube from Marcus called Another Story. Her resonance focuses all on critical hit rate and critical damage. For our special piece though, we use elucidation because it gives us the highest amount of combined value of critical hit rate and ultimate might. Combining these two stats, no other piece in the game would give you as much value as the elucidation piece, and that is going to be the reason why we use that. If you want this resonance pattern here, it's going to be on level 5, and you might have a different pattern here. You might not have an X, you might have a different piece form, let me say it like that, and therefore you would have to reorganize this here a little bit. Could be, could not be. The link to this is in the description down below. Windsong's portraits are, by the way, complete garbage. They are heavily outdated. Windsong is over 2 years old, and her portraits, for some reason that I can't figure out, didn't see a rework. So completely ignore every single portrait from Windsong. They don't stand the test of time anymore. Let's hop into battle and see how all of this looks in action. So there's really just one thing that you have to really do, and that is to use Six's buff incantation onto Windsong as much as possible. Sometimes, yeah, maybe even twice a turn. But you're gonna start the battle off, and you're gonna use Chen-Higo-Ang's ultimate immediately on turn 1. You want to use Enigma twice, so that he has his ultimate ready on turn 2. Other than that, you're gonna use the Practicability incantation with Windsong, because as you can see, that gives you preparation Windsong incantations. That is so that you accumulate rehabilitation precast incantations that you then going to combine. So, because one of the incantations that you generate as precast incantations, that you accumulate as precast incantations, they would fade away after one turn. So you have to combine them in order for you to keep them into your hand. You want to accumulate as many of those incantations as possible before you use your ultimate, as your ultimate would use all of the accumulated incantations all at once. The more and more you have, the more and more damage your ultimate deals. Additionally, you have to use, of course, the buff incantation from 6 onto Windsong every single turn, because that accumulates the most amount of stacks of measure that you possibly can. Nothing else in the game accumulates as much measure stacks as the buff incantation from 6. You can see we right now have 8 stacks of measure. We want to stack this up as much as we possibly can before we use our ultimate. Because as you can see, this incantation right here called Rehabilitation, all of the rehabilitation incantation in our hand will be used when we use our ultimate. And as you can read here, for each stack of measure, these rehabilitation incantations deal more damage. That's why have as many rehabilitation incantations as possible in your hand and as many stacks of measure onto you before you use your ultimate. And you accumulate these very rehabilitation incantations by using your Practicability incantation. So that is what you want to do every single turn. You want to use 6's buff incantation on to Windsong. You want to use Windsong's Practicability incantation. That will accumulate yourself the Rehabilitation incantation, and those are the ones that you want to save. And in order for you to do that, you have to combine them with already existing rehabilitation incantations in your hand. Otherwise they would fade away. Don't use them now. And in case you would accumulate one of those rehabilitation incantations and you would have nothing here to combine them with, that is the time in which you use your unfinished tune. That will give you a piece that lets you combine this precast incantation with the incantation that the unfinished tune accumulated. And that's gonna be about it. So we combine, on that is turn 2 of course, we combine, we use Enigma's ultimate, we buff Windsong with the buff from 6, now that we have here, here you can see this is a little bit of RNG dependent. Sometimes you don't have 2 practicability incantations available to you. I do have 2, so I use both of them this turn, obviously. If you only would have 1, you would have debuffed your opponents with 6 right now before you use this practicability incantation. But since I have 2, I use both of them. If you don't have any, yeah, then debuff the opponents and use Enigma, use whatever you have available. Never ever though use a rehabilitation incantation actively with Windsong. You want to save those for your ultimate. And that's literally about it. That is everything that you need to know, explained right here. Of course, right? In case, let's say, you don't have these practicability incantations with Windsong, but you have buffs with 6, use the buff from 6 multiple times a turn even on Windsong. Because again, nothing gives you more stacks of measure that you desperately need and want to stack as much as you possibly can than the buff from 6. And there you go. So now we have our ultimate available with Windsong. We can see that we have 3 incantations of rehabilitation in our hand. That is usually, yeah, good enough. In this very case, the moment that you have accumulated the ultimate with Windsong, make sure that you use the buff incantation with 6 as much as you possibly can. Use your unfinished tune to accumulate incantations with Windsong so that you get 1 more rehabilitation incantation into your hand actually. But always use all the buffs. Do everything you want to do this turn before you use Windsong's ultimate, so that you gain as many stacks of measure beforehand. Here, even use the practicability. The only thing that you want to watch out for is that in this very case here, you do not want to combine your rehabilitation incantations with each other this turn. So if I would use this discipline debuff here with 6, I would make a mistake, because I would then combine these rehabilitation incantations here together. That means I would have 1 incantation less that would be cast when I use my ultimate. So watch out for that. Instead of this debuff right here, I use the one on the very right hand side. And now that I have done every single thing I possibly could and used as many buff incantations with 6, I used my unfinished tune to accumulate 1 more rehabilitation incantation. That is the time that I want to use my ultimate with Windsong. And after that, you're just gonna repeat everything that we have gone through right now. And that is how you play Windsong with her newly established Euphoria update right now in the Atomic Heart collaboration, guys. I hope that was fun and informative. If you like Reverse1999 content in general, please consider leaving a follow on my channel. I would really appreciate that. But until next time, take care of yourselves, have a great day, peace!